She woke up before the sun every morning, her body already tired from the day before, but her mind full of the tasks that awaited her. Her small home was quiet, except for the soft breathing of her younger siblings, still asleep in the next room. She carefully moved around the kitchen, gathering what little food they had for breakfast. She measured it out with care, making sure each of them would get enough, even if it meant she would have almost nothing for herself, the smell of burnt toast. And weak tea filled the air. She thought about the bills stacked in the corner of the living room and the hospital visits she needed to pay for later that week. She felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders, but she did not complain. She had grown used to carrying burdens that were far too heavy for someone her age. After the brief breakfast, she hurried the children to get ready for school. She packed their bags as she always did, checking to make sure they had enough notebooks, pencils, and a small snack. She watched them leave with a mix of pride and worry. Her heart ached, knowing she had to leave them alone for hours while she worked. She whispered a quiet prayer for their safety before stepping out into the chilly morning. Her first job was at a small grocery store, where she spent hours standing behind the counter, her feet aching and her back sore. She greeted customers with a smile, even when she was exhausted, and often went without her own lunch to make sure she could bring something extra home for her family. She thought about her parents who were too sick to work and relied on her for everything. She wanted to be angry sometimes at the unfairness of it all, but she never had the time or energy to dwell on her feelings. She focused on the tasks in front of her. Instead, after the grocery store, she rushed to a nearby cafe where she worked as a waitress. The job was demanding, and often rude customers tested her patience, but she reminded herself that every tip she earned could help cover another bill or buy medicine. Her hands were sore from carrying heavy trays, and she smelled of coffee and cleaning products by the end of her shift. She counted the coins in her pocket, hoping it would be enough for the evening meal when she returned home. Evening brought little relief. The moment she walked through the door, she was greeted by the chatter and laughter of her siblings, but also by the quiet groans of her parents in pain. She quickly put down her bag and helped her mother with simple chores while making sure her father was comfortable. She served the family what little food she had managed to save for them and watched as they ate with gratitude in their eyes. Her heart swelled with love and sadness at the same time. Later, she sat at the small kitchen table with her bills spread out in front of her. She added numbers, carefully calculating what could be paid now and what would have to wait. She sighed as she realized there was never enough. She thought about the hospital visit her mother needed and the medicine her father required. She wished she could earn more, but the jobs she had were already demanding every ounce of her strength. Night came, and she prepared the children for bed, reading to them from a worn-out book. She kissed their foreheads and tucked them in with care, making sure they were warm and comfortable. Her own room was sparse, with only a thin blanket on the mattress and a single lamp casting a dim glow. She sat there for a moment, letting the silence wash over her. She closed her eyes and allowed herself a brief moment of exhaustion before she began her own chores for the night. She cleaned the kitchen and washed the dishes one by one, thinking about how she wished life could be different, how she longed to pursue her dreams and see the world beyond the narrow streets of her neighborhood. But she knew that could not happen yet, not while her family depended on her. She had chosen this path long ago, and even though it was hard, she would not turn away from it. She reminded herself that every sacrifice she made now would one day bring relief and happiness to those she loved. Sometimes she caught herself dreaming while scrubbing the floors or folding laundry. She imagined a life where she could rest without worry, where she could laugh without guilt, where her family could be healthy and happy without relying entirely on her. She pictured children growing up strong and confident, parents smiling without pain. She clung to these visions in the quiet moments of the night, letting them give her strength to face another day. Sleep came in small fragments. The noise of the house settling and the occasional cough from her father kept her alert. She lay awake thinking about the next day, the endless cycle of work, care, and worry, yet she never let herself feel defeated. Instead, she made plans in her mind of how to stretch her resources, how to make a little money go further, how to find small joys in each day. She was determined to keep moving forward, no matter how heavy the burden her. Neighbors often saw her carrying groceries or sweeping the street and admired her dedication, but few knew the full extent of her struggles. She never complained and rarely asked for help, believing that she had to face these challenges alone, yet deep inside she yearned for a hand to hold, for a kind word, for someone to see her efforts not as expected but as extraordinary. She found comfort in the small smiles of her siblings and the gentle touch of her mother's hand. She drew strength from their presence, even as the weight of responsibility pressed ever harder on her weeks. Passed in the same rhythm, she worked from dawn until late at night, balancing jobs, chores, and caregiving. She learned to survive on little sleep and little food because the needs of others came first. She became skilled at making small amounts of money last and at comforting those who relied on her. She discovered reserves of patience and resilience she never knew she had. She realized that her love for her family gave her power to endure hardships that would have broken others. Despite the constant struggle, she occasionally found moments of unexpected joy watching her siblings laugh over a shared joke, seeing her parents smile despite their pain, hearing a kind word from a coworker. These small sparks lit her days. She treasured them more than anything else, for they reminded her why she continued to give everything she had every day. She knew that one day the sacrifices she made now would be remembered and appreciated, even if she could not see it yet. Her life was not easy, but it was filled with purpose. She moved through her days with determination and quiet courage, carrying her burdens without complaint. She dreamed of a better future for her family and held on to hope that one day circumstances would change. She faced each day with a strength born of love and sacrifice, and even in the hardest moments, she never wavered from her path. And so each morning she rose again before the sun, her heart full of worry, but also full of determination. Her body weary but her spirit strong, she faced the world with quiet courage, doing what needed to be done, caring for those who depended on her and hoping that one day her efforts would bring the relief and happiness she so deeply wished for her family. One morning, as she was preparing breakfast for her siblings, she noticed her mother looking more tired and weak than usual. Her cough had grown worse, and her face looked pale. She worried silently, but continued to serve the children first, making sure they had enough to eat and enough warmth to face the day. She reminded herself that she had to stay strong for everyone, even as fear and anxiety tugged at her heart. Later that day, she received a phone call from the clinic confirming that her mother needed immediate treatment. The cost was far beyond what she could afford, and the urgency of the situation made her heart pound with panic. She felt a heavy weight in her chest as she realized that the small amount of money she had managed to save would not cover the expenses. She could feel the pressure of time closing in and the fear of losing her mother haunted her every thought. She left the house quickly, rushing through the streets, carrying a small bag of belongings for her mother. She felt helpless and frustrated, knowing that no matter how hard she worked, there were problems that could not be solved with effort alone. She thought about all the time she had sacrificed for her family and wondered if it would ever be enough. She whispered to herself that she could not give up, even if the world seemed against her. At the hospital, she met with the doctor, who explained the seriousness of her mother's condition. The treatment was complicated and expensive, and she could barely understand the details. Through the cloud of worry in her mind, she sat quietly, taking in the words, knowing that every minute counted and that her mother's life depended on her ability to act. She felt a surge of determination despite the fear. She would find a way no matter what. Back home, she explained the situation to her siblings, who looked at her with wide eyes. She tried to hide the panic in her voice, but it was impossible to completely mask the worry. She reassured them that everything would be fine and that she would find a way to take care of their mother. She hugged them tightly, feeling their warmth and love as a reminder of why she could not give up. She began to think of ways to raise the money. She considered asking friends or neighbors for help, but pride and fear held her back. She did not want to appear weak or incapable. She thought about selling some of her belongings or taking extra shifts at work, but even those measures would not cover the full cost. She realized that she was facing one of the biggest challenges of her life, and the thought of failure made her stomach twist with anxiety. The days that followed were filled with worry and uncertainty. She worked longer hours at the grocery store and the cafe, hoping to earn extra money. She skipped meals and pushed her body beyond exhaustion. She kept careful track of every coin and bill, hoping to stretch her resources as far as possible. She felt the strain of the endless labor, but she refused to let despair take hold. She knew that giving up was not an option at night. She stayed up planning and calculating. She made lists of everything she could do to gather the funds. She contacted anyone who might be able to help, even as she feared rejection. She imagined her mother lying in the hospital waiting for treatment, and it strengthened her resolve she would find a way through this storm, even if it took everything she had. Meanwhile, her siblings tried to help in small ways. They brought her tea or helped tidy the house, but she often brushed off their efforts. Knowing that the real burden rested on her shoulders, she loved them dearly and wished she could share the weight with them, but she also wanted to shield them from the harsh reality. She carried their hopes and her parents' health in her heart every moment of every day. One evening, as she counted the money she had managed to gather, she realized it was still not enough. The panic rose again, but she forced herself to take a deep breath and think. Clearly, she considered taking a loan, but the interest would be crushing. She thought of borrowing from someone she barely knew, but trust was a fragile thing, and she could not risk betrayal. She felt trapped between impossible choices and the clock ticking against her. She decided to speak directly with the hospital staff, explaining her situation. She begged for understanding and asked if there were any programs or assistance available. She waited anxiously, hoping for a solution. She felt vulnerable, admitting how little she had and how much was at stake. She felt her chest tighten with fear, and hope intertwined in a way that made sleep impossible that night. During the long hours, she reflected on the sacrifices she had made over the years. She thought about all the times she had gone without food or sleep for her family. She thought about the dreams she had put aside to care for others. She realized that those sacrifices were not wasted, but the immediate need made her feel that even her past efforts were not enough. She wished she could do more in this moment to save her mother. One morning, she received a small ray of hope. The hospital staff mentioned a charity program that might help cover part of the costs. She quickly submitted the necessary forms and waited anxiously. She continued to work as hard as ever while hoping against hope that some help would arrive. She refused to let herself despair completely, even though the waiting was excruciating her. Siblings began to notice her exhaustion and tried to lighten her load in small ways. They helped cook simple meals and tidied the house without being asked. She smiled at their efforts and thanked them. Quietly, though, her heart ached that they had to see her struggle so much. She wished she could take all the pain away from them, but she knew she could only do so much. Each day was filled with tension and uncertainty. She woke with a sense of dread and went to bed with a sense of worry. She moved through her routine with careful attention to every detail, ensuring that her family had what they needed. Even as her body protested, she became more resourceful, finding ways to make food stretch and money go further. She learned to navigate the obstacles in her path with determination and focus. She refused to allow the crisis to break her spirit. Finally, a response came from the charity program. There was enough assistance to cover part of her mother's treatment, but not all. She felt a mixture of relief and continued anxiety. She knew that she would still have to find the rest of the money, but the weight on her shoulders felt slightly lighter. She resolved to continue working tirelessly to bridge the gap. She refused to let the financial strain prevent her mother from receiving care. Through it all, she discovered her own strength. She had faced fear and uncertainty with courage. She had balanced hope and worry in a way that kept her moving forward. She had found creative solutions to problems that seemed insurmountable and had maintained her love and care for her family despite overwhelming stress. She realized that even in the darkest moments, there was a spark of resilience that she could rely on. She also discovered the depth of her family's love and support. Even though they were young and not able to contribute financially, they offered comfort and encouragement in ways that mattered. She felt their presence as a source of energy and motivation. She realized that sacrifice was not only about giving but also about drawing strength from those you loved. The crisis had not yet passed, but she had proven to herself that she could face great challenges. She had learned patience in the waiting, courage in the uncertainty, and determination in the face of fear. She knew that the coming days would still be difficult, but she also knew that she would continue to rise to meet them. She felt a quiet sense of pride in her ability to endure and protect those she loved. As she prepared her family for another day, she felt a sense of calm determination. She would continue to work and plan and struggle if necessary. She would not let despair take hold. She would carry her family through this trial, even if it meant going without herself. She knew that every effort counted and that her love and dedication could make a difference. She held on to hope and resolved to keep moving forward no matter what challenges lay ahead. One afternoon, while she was at the hospital waiting for news about her mother's treatment, she noticed a man in a white coat watching her from across the room. He seemed calm and confident, and yet there was a warmth in his eyes that made her feel slightly at ease. She had seen doctors before, but there was something different about this one. She felt a flicker of hope even as her heart remained heavy with worry. He approached her gently and asked about her mother's condition. She explained everything quickly, her voice trembling as she spoke of the challenges and the expenses she felt exposed, telling a stranger so much about her life. But there was a sincerity in his tone that made her trust him. She noticed that he listened carefully without interrupting and seemed genuinely concerned about her family, though. Doctor asked about her own life, and she hesitated at first. She was used to keeping her struggles private. But something about his presence made her speak. She told him about the long hours at work, the sacrifices she had made for her siblings, and the fear she felt for her parents. She did not hold back, and she felt a weight lifting as she spoke aloud what she had been carrying alone for so long. Nodded and offered words of comfort and support. He told her that she was doing an extraordinary job and that her love and dedication were remarkable. She felt a warmth in her chest she had not felt in months. The recognition from someone outside her family gave her strength and hope that maybe she was not alone in facing these challenges. Over the next few days, the doctor returned to check on her mother's progress. He offered advice on treatment and ways to make the hospital stay more comfortable. He also provided guidance on financial options and helped her connect with programs that could assist her family. As she found herself relying on his presence for reassurance and practical support, she felt a sense of relief she had not experienced before. Knowing that someone capable and caring was willing to help at home, she began to see small changes. She could focus more on her siblings and her parents because the doctor was helping with the logistics of her mother's care. She did not have to carry every burden alone, and she discovered a small freedom she had forgotten existed. She still worked hard, but there was less desperation in her movements because she had support from someone who understood her situation. The siblings noticed a difference as well. They saw her smile more often and laugh softly. Even during difficult moments, they felt a subtle change in the atmosphere of the home. She began to let herself accept small acts of kindness from them and from the doctor. She realized that accepting help did not mean weakness. It meant trusting that others could share the load, and that love sometimes required cooperation as much as sacrifice. Doctor continued to visit and check in. He brought information about nutrition, medicine, and ways to make her mother more comfortable. He explained things clearly and patiently, answering questions she had been too afraid to ask before. She found herself learning new things and gaining confidence in managing her family's health. She began to see solutions where before there had only been problems. One day, he suggested ways she could also take care of herself. He noticed the exhaustion in her eyes and the tension in her shoulders. He encouraged her to rest when possible and to eat regularly. She had almost forgotten what it felt like to be cared for, and at first she resisted. She had always put herself last, but slowly she realized that she could not be strong for others if she neglected her own needs. She began to allow small moments of self-care and noticed the difference it made in her energy and mood. The relationship between the doctor and her family grew gradually. He did not impose himself, but offered guidance and assistance when needed. He was careful to respect her pride and her choices while providing support. She felt a trust forming she had never experienced before. It was a partnership rather than charity, and she valued it deeply. With his help, she found ways to cover the remaining costs of her mother's treatment. She applied for programs and grants she did not know existed, and the doctor guided her through the paperwork. She still had to contribute her own earnings, but now the task seemed manageable. She no longer felt completely overwhelmed by the situation, and she discovered a new sense of hope. Her siblings watched the changes and felt a sense of relief themselves. They saw her less tired and more focused. She allowed them to help in ways they had not been able to before, and the household began to function more smoothly. The sense of despair that had hung over the home started to lift, and there was room for laughter and conversation once again. She realized that accepting help did not diminish her efforts, but enhanced them and strengthened the family as a whole one. Evening, as she reflected on the past weeks, she realized how much her life had shifted. She had faced fear and desperation alone, and now she had discovered that connection and support could ease the burden. She felt grateful for the presence of the doctor who had arrived at a critical time, not just to help financially, but to restore faith and provide guidance. She saw that even small acts of kindness could have profound effects. Her work continued and her sacrifices remained significant, but now she carried them with a sense of purpose and strength. She no longer felt that every challenge was insurmountable. She knew that help could come from unexpected places, and that courage was not only about endurance, but also about the wisdom to accept support when needed. She began to see her own resilience in a new light, and to acknowledge her accomplishments with quiet pride. The doctor encouraged her to consider her own goals and dreams. She had put them aside for so long that they had become distant memories. He reminded her that caring for others was important, but so was caring for herself. She began to think about the future and the possibilities beyond the immediate crisis. She realized that there could be a balance between duty and personal fulfillment, and that she did not have to sacrifice everything to be devoted, though. The household started to experience small joys again. She found moments to laugh with her siblings and share simple pleasures. She noticed the warmth in her parents' eyes and felt gratitude that they were receiving the care they needed. She realized that her life had not been solely defined by struggle, but by resilience, love, and the ability to adapt. She began to see that challenges could be met with courage, and that help was a tool rather than a crutch. As the weeks went on, the doctor continued to check in and offer guidance. He provided advice on long-term health plans and ways to maintain stability for the family. She felt supported and empowered. She began to think strategically about the future, rather than reacting constantly to emergencies. She found a sense of control she had thought lost forever, and the knowledge that she was not alone in facing life's difficulties. Through it all, she learned lessons about trust, humility, and the power of connection. She realized that even someone who had endured so much alone could benefit from compassion and support. She understood that accepting help could coexist with strength and sacrifice, and that the combination made her more effective in caring for her family. She embraced the balance between giving and receiving, and found that it made her life richer and her family stronger. The presence of the doctor became a turning point in her story, not only easing the immediate crisis, but also opening doors to understanding, support, and hope. She learned that even in difficult circumstances, there could be allies, and that human kindness could arrive when least expected. She began to see the future with cautious optimism and renewed determination to protect and nurture her loved ones, while also considering her own well-being. Household had changed subtly but profoundly. She was no longer carrying every burden alone. There was support, guidance, and hope interwoven with her sacrifices. She found herself smiling more, feeling less tension, and realizing that life could include both responsibility and relief. She recognized that her journey had shifted from mere survival to one of cautious growth and empowerment, and that even small acts of help could alter the course of a difficult life. As the days passed, she began to face new decisions that tested her in ways she had not expected. She realized that accepting the doctor's help had opened doors, but also required her to trust someone outside her family fully. She felt a strange mixture of relief and hesitation. She wanted to keep control of her household and her life, while also knowing that letting go a little could bring greater stability. She found herself thinking deeply about what it meant to trust and rely on another person. Her mother was gradually improving with the treatment and the support from programs the doctor had guided her to. She could finally see a small glimmer of health returning to her parents. She felt an enormous sense of gratitude and relief. She knew that this progress was due not only to her hard work, but also to the support she had allowed into her life. She began to realize that sacrifice alone was not always enough, and that accepting help could be a part of loving her family. The siblings noticed a change as well. They began to take more initiative around the house, offering small but meaningful assistance. They cooked simple meals, tidied up without being asked, and reminded her to rest for a few moments when she could. She realized that she had been carrying too much alone, and that letting them contribute gave everyone a sense of shared responsibility and strengthened their bond. She smiled quietly at their efforts, realizing that family could lift each other even in small ways. The doctor continued to visit and offer guidance. She learned more about managing her mother's health and preventing future emergencies. She began to understand that planning and seeking help early could prevent crises. She found empowerment in knowledge and realized that she did not have to face every problem alone. She was discovering that collaboration and trust could coexist with strength and sacrifice. One afternoon, the doctor asked about her own dreams and plans. She had long put aside thoughts of her future to focus entirely on her family. He encouraged her to consider what she wanted for herself. She felt a mix of guilt and curiosity at the suggestion she had never prioritized herself. But slowly she began to entertain the idea that she could have a life beyond survival. She thought about education, opportunities, and small joys she had abandoned long ago. She realized that she had been holding herself back unnecessarily. She began to allow herself to dream again. She thought of small goals she could pursue, even while caring for her family. She imagined attending evening classes or taking a short course that interested her. She thought about hobbies she had once loved and ways she could reconnect with the world outside her home. She felt a cautious excitement mixed with fear. She wondered if it was selfish to consider herself, but the doctor reassured her that self-care and personal growth were part of being a strong caregiver. Household slowly adjusted to this new balance. She still worked hard, but she delegated tasks and allowed her siblings to help more. She noticed that the atmosphere in the home was lighter and more cooperative. Her parents responded positively to the changes and seemed to gain strength from seeing her not only survive but also grow. She realized that fostering independence in others did not diminish her own efforts, but multiplied the love and care in the household. With the doctor's guidance, she explored ways to increase her income in sustainable ways. She thought about small projects, side jobs, and even long-term opportunities that could provide stability. She realized that she had been reactive in the past, only responding to emergencies, but now she could plan ahead. She felt a sense of control she had not known for years, and it brought a quiet joy. She began to see that her sacrifices could be directed wisely rather than worn blindly as a burden. Siblings thrived under this new structure. They felt more confident contributing and began to see the value of working together as a family. They learned lessons in responsibility and compassion by witnessing their sister balance care, work, and trust. She encouraged them gently, showing that leadership could be kind and firm at the same time. She saw their growth and felt a quiet pride knowing that the seeds she planted were beginning to flourish. The doctor also encouraged her to think about emotional well-being. She began to allow herself moments of reflection, journaling, and quiet thought. She realized that her mental health was just as important as her physical endurance and the health of her family. She began to notice small improvements in her mood and resilience. She learned that strength came not only from enduring hardship, but also from nurturing herself and seeking guidance when needed. She started to experience small victories that brought confidence and relief. She managed to pay off some of the remaining debts from her mother's treatment. She created a better routine at home that allowed her more rest. She found time for short walks, small hobbies, and laughter with her siblings. She felt a sense of balance she had never known and discovered that life could contain both responsibility and joy. With this new perspective, she began to dream bigger. She thought about long-term security for her family, education for her siblings, and opportunities for herself. She considered learning new skills and perhaps finding a career that could combine her talents and interests. She realized that sacrifice could coexist with ambition, and that love did not require giving up all personal hopes. She felt empowered to plan a future that included both care for others and care for herself. The doctor's presence continued to be a steadying force. He offered practical advice and emotional support without imposing on her autonomy. She began to trust that asking for help was not a sign of weakness, but a smart strategy for building a sustainable life. She learned to listen to guidance without feeling controlled. She saw that collaboration could create a stronger foundation for her family and herself. As she reflected on her journey, She realized how far she had come. She had faced fear, exhaustion, and financial crises, but had emerged with knowledge, support, and renewed hope. She felt gratitude for the doctor, for the programs that had assisted her, and for the resilience she discovered within herself. She began to understand that life's challenges could be met with both courage and wisdom, and that accepting help did not lessen her sacrifices. Her parents were steadily regaining health. Her siblings were more capable and responsible. The household had transformed from a place of constant struggle to one of cooperation and hope. She felt a quiet sense of accomplishment and joy. She began to think about the future with cautious optimism and realized that she could build a life that honored both her love for her family and her own personal aspirations. Sister understood that life would always have challenges, but she felt ready to face them with a balance of sacrifice, trust, and self-care. She knew that strength was not only in enduring hardship, but also in knowing when to seek guidance. She felt empowered by the realization that she did not have to do everything alone, and that the combination of personal effort and support from others could create a more stable and loving environment. The family began to experience moments of peace and happiness again. They shared meals without anxiety, laughed during evening conversations, and supported each other in small ways. She felt that the home had become a place where love and care could flourish alongside resilience and planning. She had learned that guiding others, accepting help, and allowing for personal growth could coexist beautifully. She embraced the lessons of trust, patience, and balance. She knew that challenges would come, but felt equipped to handle them. She understood that love could be expressed not only through sacrifice, but also through strategic support and shared responsibility. She felt a deep sense of fulfillment as she watched her family thrive and realized that her own dreams could now take shape alongside her dedication to those she loved. The sister felt that her journey was no longer solely about surviving, but about creating a life with hope, connection, and purpose. She had learned that accepting help was a sign of wisdom, that shared effort could strengthen bonds, and that her sacrifices could be directed in ways that built rather than drained energy. She looked forward to the days ahead with a sense of determination, gratitude, and cautious joy, knowing that she was no longer facing life alone. Months had passed since the crisis with her mother's health began, and the sister began to feel a sense of stability. Returning to her family, she continued to work hard and care for her parents and siblings, but now there was a sense of balance in her life. She had learned to accept support from the doctor and from programs designed to help families like hers. She had discovered that strength could coexist with help, and that trust did not diminish sacrifice. Her mother was steadily improving, and her father had regained some of his former strength. The siblings had grown more independent and capable, taking on small responsibilities that freed her to focus on bigger challenges. She noticed that the home was filled with laughter again, and quiet evenings were no
longer consumed by worry.
She realized that her family was slowly regaining a sense of normalcy, and she felt relief and gratitude for the progress they had made. With more stability at home, she began to focus on her own dreams. She had always wanted to continue her education and explore new skills, but the constant demands of her family had left little room for personal growth. She started taking small steps. She enrolled in an evening class and began to explore her interests. She discovered that she enjoyed learning and that her mind could still grow even while caring for her loved ones. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and excitement about the future. The doctor continued to be a steady presence. He offered guidance when needed and encouraged her to pursue her personal goals alongside her family responsibilities. He never pressured her and respected her decisions. She had come to trust him not only as a professional, but as a friend who understood her struggles and celebrated her successes. His support reminded her that connections with others could be a source of strength and inspiration. She began to see that life could be shared without losing personal integrity. At work, she found that her new perspective helped her manage challenges more effectively. She felt less stressed and more confident. She was able to balance multiple tasks and find creative solutions to problems. She noticed that her coworkers responded positively to her calm and focused presence. She felt proud of the resilience and skill she had developed through years of sacrifice and struggle. She realized that her experiences had shaped her into someone capable of navigating difficulties with patience and wisdom. Her siblings continued to grow under her guidance. She encouraged them to think independently and take responsibility while still providing support and love. She noticed how their confidence increased and how they began to look out for each other. She felt joy in witnessing their growth, and in knowing that her efforts had helped them become capable and compassionate individuals. She recognized that her sacrifices had created a foundation for the next generation to thrive. Her parents' health continued to improve. The family was able to plan for the future with less fear and anxiety. She began to think about long-term stability. She considered savings for emergencies, education for her siblings, small investments. To ensure a better life, she felt a sense of empowerment she had not known before, as she realized that her decisions could shape a secure future. Her sense of responsibility had not diminished, but it had evolved into careful planning and thoughtful action. One day she reflected on the journey she had undertaken. The months of struggle, fear, and uncertainty had been exhausting, but they had also taught her valuable lessons. She had learned that accepting help did not diminish her strength, that trust could be powerful, and that careful planning could prevent crises. She realized that her sacrifices were meaningful, not only for immediate survival, but for the long-term well-being of her family. She felt a deep sense of pride and accomplishment. She also recognized how much she had grown personally. She had discovered patience, resilience, and the ability to adapt to unexpected challenges. She had learned to balance care for others with care for herself. She had realized that nurturing her own growth and dreams did not conflict with her responsibilities, but enhanced her ability to serve her family. She felt a renewed sense of identity and purpose that extended beyond her household. The household had become a place of warmth, cooperation, and shared responsibility. Her siblings contributed in meaningful ways. Her parents provided guidance and support, and she felt a sense of partnership and connection that had been absent during the worst days of the crisis. She noticed that love and care were not only expressed through sacrifice, but also through collaboration and shared effort. She felt comforted by the harmony that had grown from hardship. Sister continued to take small steps toward her personal goals. She found joy in learning and in discovering new skills. She began to see opportunities for the future and realized that her life could be fulfilling both as a caregiver and as an individual. She felt a sense of freedom she had never known and began to dream of possibilities that were once out of reach. She understood that growth and responsibility could coexist and balance. Her relationship with the doctor continued to be one of mutual respect and trust. He encouraged her to pursue her ambitions and celebrated her accomplishments without expecting anything in return. She had learned to accept support without feeling indebted and to collaborate without losing autonomy. She felt grateful for his guidance and for the example of kindness and professionalism he provided. She began to see that positive connections could enhance her life rather than complicate it. Family began to plan small celebrations and shared experiences. They took time to enjoy meals together, share stories, and celebrate minor victories. Her siblings felt motivated and supported, and her parents expressed gratitude and pride in their children. She noticed that joy and love were gradually returning to the home and that moments of peace were becoming more frequent. She felt a deep sense of satisfaction knowing that her efforts had helped create this environment. The sister also reflected on the lessons of humility, perseverance, and trust. She realized that life would continue to present challenges, but that she had developed the skills, mindset, and support to navigate them. She understood that asking for help was a strength, and that collaboration could produce outcomes beyond what she could achieve alone. She felt prepared to face future difficulties with confidence and grace. Her personal growth and the stability of her family created a sense of possibility. She began to explore further educational opportunities, consider career options, think about long-term goals. She felt empowered to shape her life intentionally while continuing to nurture and care for her family. She realized that sacrifice could coexist with ambition, and that love for others did not require abandoning oneself. Months of struggle had transformed her in ways she had never anticipated. She had developed resilience, wisdom, and an appreciation for the value of support and guidance. She had learned that life was not only about enduring hardships, but also about finding balance. Seeking knowledge and nurturing connections, she felt gratitude for the people who had supported her, for the lessons learned, and for the opportunity to build a better future. Her siblings thrived in the environment she helped create. They took initiative, showed empathy, and contributed meaningfully to the household. She felt joy in watching them grow into responsible and caring individuals. She recognized that her efforts had a lasting impact, and that the sacrifices she made were meaningful. It's not only for survival, but for shaping character and creating opportunity. She felt a sense of legacy forming through her actions. The sister realized that her life had shifted from constant crisis management to a place of strategic planning, shared responsibility, and hope. She understood that strength was not only in endurance, but also in the wisdom to seek guidance, accept help, and nurture oneself. She felt a renewed sense of purpose and clarity about the future, and understood that her journey was ongoing but manageable. With resilience, care, and planning, her family continued to support each other and celebrate small victories together. They shared meals, laughter, and moments of connection. Her parents expressed pride and gratitude. Her siblings demonstrated growth and responsibility, and she felt a profound sense of accomplishment and hope. She understood that love, sacrifice, and collaboration could coexist to create a home filled with stability, care, and optimism. The sister looked toward the future with cautious excitement. She knew challenges would continue, but felt empowered by her experiences, the support of the doctor, and the growth of her family. She realized that her journey had transformed not only her household, but also herself. She felt prepared to pursue personal goals, continue caring for her family, and navigate life's uncertainties with courage, wisdom, and compassion. In the end, she understood that life was a balance of sacrifice, trust, personal growth, and shared effort. She realized that the struggles she had endured had taught her invaluable lessons and had created opportunities for her family and herself. She felt gratitude, hope, and determination as she looked ahead, knowing that she could face whatever came next with resilience, love, and wisdom. Life had begun to feel different for the sister. Even though challenges still existed, she had grown used to balancing work, family, and personal growth, but now she did so with a sense of calm determination rather than constant panic. She had learned to trust in herself and in the support that had entered her life. She knew that she could face difficulties with resilience and strategy instead of fear and exhaustion. Her morning started with care, but also with a sense of planning. She prepared breakfast for her siblings, making sure that they had the nutrition and encouragement they needed. She no longer rushed through the routine with tension. Instead, she took moments to breathe and reflect on the day ahead. She made small adjustments to balance her energy and ensure that she could sustain her efforts without collapsing under the weight of responsibilities. Work, she noticed a new confidence in herself. She approached tasks with patience and clarity and found that she could handle difficult situations more calmly. She discovered that her ability to think ahead and plan effectively made her more efficient and respected by others. She felt a sense of pride in her abilities and recognized that the years of sacrifice had shaped her into someone capable of navigating complexity with wisdom and focus. Her siblings were growing more self-reliant and responsible. She encouraged them to take initiative and allowed them to contribute meaningfully to the household. They helped with chores, cooking, and even caring for their parents in small ways. She felt satisfaction in seeing their growth and understood that sharing responsibility not only lightened her load but also strengthened the family bond and instilled confidence in the younger generation. Her parents continued to improve, and their gratitude was evident in small gestures and words. They expressed appreciation for her efforts and for the progress the family had made. She felt warmth and relief knowing that her sacrifices had tangible positive effects. She also realized that care and love were now more mutual within the household, and that each member played a role in supporting the others. The doctor remained a steady presence, offering guidance, advice, and reassurance when needed. She valued the wisdom and perspective he provided, but also appreciated that he allowed her to make her own decisions. She had learned to seek help without feeling dependent and to accept guidance without feeling diminished. She saw that collaboration and trust could enhance her life and the lives of her family members. With a more stable household, she began to think about long-term goals. She considered education, skills development, and ways to secure financial stability. She explored small opportunities that could create future independence and freedom. She realized that planning ahead was as important as managing daily responsibilities, and that foresight could prevent future crises. She felt empowered by the sense of control she was regaining over her life. Her evenings were quieter than before. She took time to reflect on accomplishments, plan for the next day, spend moments with her family. She allowed herself to enjoy small joys like conversation, shared laughter, and personal hobbies. She realized that these moments of balance and joy were not indulgence but necessary nourishment for her body and spirit. She felt a sense of renewal from these pauses and discovered that rest could coexist with diligence and care. Her siblings also began to show emotional growth. They offered comfort to each other, showed empathy, and expressed gratitude more openly. She noticed how these changes created a positive atmosphere and reduced stress in the home. She felt proud of the values and habits that were being nurtured in her family and recognized that her guidance had helped shape this environment. The sister reflected on the lessons she had learned. She understood that strength was not only in enduring hardship, but also in knowing when to seek help. She realized that sacrifice alone was not always enough, and that strategic collaboration and planning could create stability and opportunities. She felt a renewed sense of clarity and purpose, and saw that her efforts could be directed in ways that produced sustainable benefits for everyone in her household. Her work-life balance improved as she incorporated planning, delegation, and self-care. She found creative solutions to challenges at work and home. She realized that efficiency came from clarity, patience, and flexibility. She also noticed a sense of empowerment from being able to manage multiple responsibilities effectively. She felt that she could handle the demands of life with wisdom and adaptability, rather than merely surviving from one crisis to the next. Her relationships with her siblings deepened. She encouraged communication, cooperation, and emotional support. She taught them practical skills and nurtured their emotional intelligence. She observed the positive effects on their confidence and independence. She felt joy in watching them thrive and understood that her sacrifices had long-term value beyond immediate survival. She had created a home where growth and care could coexist. Her parents continued to offer support and guidance. She noticed that their encouragement lifted her spirits and reinforced her sense of purpose. She felt gratitude for their presence and for the resilience they displayed. Despite past hardships, she began to see the mutual exchange of care and love as a sign of a healthy family dynamic. Created a space where everyone contributed and received support in meaningful ways. The sister also explored personal growth opportunities, enrolled in courses, learned new skills, and began to think strategically about her future. She realized that nurturing her own development did not conflict with her caregiving responsibilities, but enhanced her ability to support her family. She felt a renewed sense of ambition and possibility. She recognized that self-improvement was part of a sustainable approach to family care. Doctor continued to provide guidance in both practical and emotional matters. He encouraged her to pursue personal goals while maintaining her responsibilities. She valued his perspective and appreciated the trust and respect that defined their interactions. She saw that collaboration and support could coexist with independence, and that seeking guidance was a form of empowerment rather than weakness.